Hi everyone, I'm Laura with Lonely Pines Farm, and today we're talking all about planning your garden layout. Now before we start on the garden layout, you're going to want to create your grow list. So if you've already seen our video on creating your ultimate grow list, then you're one step ahead because a few of these initial steps are pretty similar. Step one is defining your goals. Are you looking for a garden that's high in food production, more about ornamental value, a relaxing space to be in? Are you looking for neat, clean rows or more of like a cottage style garden? And don't forget to clarify like specific elements and specific types of plants you want to grow. So are there going to be veggies? Are there going to be flowers, herbs, etc.? All of this is information that you need to be able to help craft that garden layout. As an example for us, our kind of goals or areas of the garden are going to be a large garlic field, a large dahlia field, as many veggies as it takes to support the two of us. We're also putting in a pollinator garden, an archway garden, and we want to fill the rest of the property with as many flowers as we can. So now would be the time to consider your space. Take a good look at the size and layout of your gardening area. Note down things like sunlight, soil types, and any existing structures that might influence your garden design. And then once you've got a good idea of what you want to grow and the space that you're working with, now we can grab a pen and paper. So for us, each one of those areas that I mentioned before became its own sheet of paper to give us tons of space to be able to write in plants. Depending upon how meticulous you want to be, you can either just jot down a rough idea or you could actually draw it out to scale. And one thing we did to make life easier on us is once we had kind of the base layout here, I scanned this into the computer so that if we messed up at any point along the way or when we go to populate these beds next year, we can just print these out and boom, we've saved ourselves a ton of time. You can also see here that we're starting to make decisions like these are all going to be hay bales, trying to think about focal points that you might want to have within your garden along with the pathways and the growing space. And then the fun part is populating it with plants. Focus on plants that will do well in your area. Ideally here you're just picking things off of the grow list that you created earlier. So be sure to think about your seasons. You're going to want to start with your cool weather crops, your spring crops, and then think about how you might transition them into summer. For example, we have ranunculus that we grow in the spring, and then I'm going to overplant those with zinnia seeds to grow in the summer. Same way with our archway garden. These are going to be 3 panels that go over the walkway, and we're going to be growing sweet peas on them in spring, and then we're going to transition them into squash for the summer and fall. Don't forget to bring flowers into your veggie areas to entice your pollinators, and if you're curious about which plants are best planted next to each other, check out the companion planting guide on our website. When you're dropping your plants in there, be sure to account for growths. Plants like zucchini and squash get really big. I know folks that we've recommended growing potatoes, and then they've been surprised at how much of a raised bed a potato plant takes up. So be sure to look up the mature size, and they may seem far apart to start out with, but you gotta give them room to grow. Think about hardscaping and focal points. For example, we've got these spaces in between our archway panels. So what do we want to go there? Do you want like a bird bath or a concrete statue? Do you want solar lights? Do you want to use a plant as a focal point? So think about those when you're creating your garden layout. This viburnum here, we're accounting for the fact that it's going to get 10 feet across, but it's going to take a few years to get there. So we can plant annuals around it this year, but don't put a perennial next to another perennial without enough space. Some other tips that immediately come to mind: nasturtiums are great for pest control and they're great for ground cover. You can shove those in any extra space that you have in your garden. Be sure to think about access for watering and for weeding. I did a layout similar to this last year, and I found that these areas over here were impossible to get in to weed and water. So you can see this year we've put in these little dashed marks with little secret squirrel pathways that we're putting in to make sure that we can get to every inch of our garden. Make sure that your pathways in your garden are wide enough. 3 feet is the minimum, 4 feet is recommended. Those plants are going to spill out into your pathway and eat into that walking space, so make sure that you have enough space to get around. Also think up when you're planting your garden instead of just out. Things like pole beans or cucumbers that you can trellis up, squash that you can trellis up. If you can get things going vertically, you can fit more food in your garden. All right, well, there's our step-by-step guide with as many little tips as I can think of for designing your own garden layout. I hope this inspires you to dive into the gardening season with some confidence. If you've got any questions or tips or tricks or your own experience, please leave those in the comments below. If you want to be notified about all things gardening, be sure to hit that little bell icon. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Happy growing!